In the meantime, following through on her prior text, the female cast member also had her managers contact Miss Giannetti to discuss that cast member's own discomfort with behavior by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath and its negative impact on the work. The remainder of the text exchange shows how both women shared concerns about speaking up and the potential consequences of doing so. Miss Lively shared that she needed to tread carefully to, quote, salvage some degree of chemistry and camaraderie with Justin, who's not only my director, but love interest, and we're not even a third of the way done with filming. The two women then recounted their discomfort with their experiences with Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath, including one incident in which Mr. Baldoni secretly recorded them, and another in which he made an unwelcome remark about the female cast member's wardrobe. Miss Lively noted that Mr. Baldoni once asked her if he crossed a line, and when she said yes, he made a joke that he, quote, must have missed the sexual harassment meeting. 122. Miss Lively and the female cast member discussed various examples of their uncomfortable and inappropriate interactions with Mr. Baldoni, and on May 28, 2023, Miss Lively explained that her concerns were not just with Mr. Baldoni's behavior, but the way that Mr. Baldoni behaved after being confronted with his line-crossing behavior. Quote, he keeps referencing it or disconnects entirely or gets snippy and impatient as a director. He was so huffy after the sexy thing, I felt awful for saying something. 123. That same day, Miss Lively continued by observing that both she and the female cast member are not, quote, people who can't take a joke or who can't work or understand blue. We're not that fragile. Referencing Mr. Baldoni, she said, quote, you just can't record people without asking. You can't speak to people sexually while not in character or while talking about a character. And if you overstep, you move on. It's the weirdness after that makes it feel bad. Like if we speak up, the vibes on set get funky and the work suffers. 124. On May 29th, 2023, the same female cast member texted Miss Lively to recount a conversation with one of the film's producers about the cast member's own concerns with Mr. Baldoni's and Mr. Heath's conduct, and that producer agreed that the situation needed to change. 125. Later that day, the same producer also reached out to Miss Lively to say that she had spoken to Miss Giannetti and confirming her conversation with the female cast member about what had been occurring on set. 125. Later that day, the same producer also reached out to Miss Lively to say that she had spoken to Miss Giannetti and confirming her conversation with the female cast member about what had been occurring on set. Miss Lively thanked her for reaching out and replied that they would catch up later that week. 126. The next day, June 1st, 2023, that producer reached out to Miss Lively again to praise her. Miss Lively responded with gratitude and thanked the producer for, quote, taking the space to step up where we need it. The producer in turn thanked Miss Lively because she, quote, helped make space for them to finally start listening to me. So thank you. 127. After unsuccessfully attempting to raise concerns with Sony, Miss Lively expressly told Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath that there were serious HR problems on set. Mr. Heath responded that they knew, implying that someone had mentioned to them that Miss Lively had raised concerns. In response, Mr. Heath told Miss Lively that he thought she had wanted to see the nude video of his wife. 128. On June 1st, 2024, the female cast member told Miss Lively that Mr. Baldoni had expressly acknowledged her concerns in writing, stating, quote, I recognize that the last few days of filming have been difficult, but I wanted you to know that the work is really great and I'm excited for what we're creating. Equally important is that I was made aware of your concerns. I wanted you to know that they are fully received. I hear you, and adjustments will be made accordingly. The cast member conveyed to Miss Lively that she did not feel the acknowledgement was satisfactory. Miss Lively agreed. 129. On June 8, 2023, a female cast member confided in Miss Lively that she had difficulty having conversations with Mr. Baldoni. Miss Lively responded that she, too, found it, quote, really hard to speak to him. I try to cover it up with busyness, but not sure that covers what's going on. I mean, I think we're fine. We just have some stories to tell. And who knows, if it wasn't a shit, who maybe we wouldn't have found each other in such an angering way. And noted they were, quote, survivors with shared trauma. 130. Mr. Baldoni's response to hearing the grievances of Miss Lively and another female cast member was dismissive. On June 8th, 2023, the female cast member who raised concerns about Mr. Baldoni's behavior told Ms. Lively that Mr. Baldoni had been heard complaining to another actor that, quote, "Dude, I have to tell you something, but I don't want to get canceled or lose my job. You can't say anything on this set anymore." 131. As described above, Ms. Lively and others attempted to raise concerns to Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath regarding certain of the conduct described during filming, but it was futile to ask Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath to address their own behavior, and their concerns were not addressed. Despite receiving multiple detailed reports by Ms. Lively and others about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct, Wayfarer failed to investigate those reports or institute protections for the cast. This is so even though the incidents discussed above, among others, did not take place in isolation, and many, if not all, were witnessed by others. 132. In their January 31st, 2025 amended complaint, defendants admit that Ms. Lively raised concerns directly with Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath as early as May 2023. Their narrative about this complaint is telling. According to defendants, Mr. Baldoni was immediately suspicious of Ms. Lively's concerns, and although defendants cannot point to a shred of contemporaneous evidence backing this up, defendants now insist that they were informed by Sony that any, quote, complaints were not sexual in nature, and that Mr. Baldoni, quote, sensed that Lively was intentionally manipulating the facts. Mr. Baldoni admits that the way he addressed this was to create an, quote, acknowledgement note for someone else to pass on to Ms. Lively, ID, which Ms. Lively found entirely unsatisfactory. Defendants concede that Ms. Lively requested a meeting the next day on June 1st, 2023, yet instead of following Mr. Baldoni's own advice to be, quote, confident enough to listen to the women in your life, to, quote, hear their ideas and their solutions, and to, quote, actually believe them, even if what they're saying is against you, I think. Defendants mock Ms. Lively by saying she raised a, quote, series of grievances that, quote, she appeared to have spent the past 5 days overanalyzing and, quote, scrutinized every minor infraction and perceived slight. In sum, defendants have conceded that Ms. Lively raised concerns about their behavior, both to Sony and to them directly, but the response is to retroactively rebrand those concerns as non-sexual and criticize Ms. Lively for, quote, overanalyzing perceived slights. 133. By these and other behaviors, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Wayfarer engaged in harassing conduct and failed their obligations to investigate complaints of workplace harassment, prevent inappropriate and harassing behaviors on set, and provide avenues for cast and crew members to safely raise concerns to neutral parties so that they could be investigated and appropriately addressed. 134. On or about January 31st, 2025, in the midst of this litigation, and nearly 2 years after Ms. Lively first raised concerns to Wayfarer in May 2023, outside investigation counsel for Wayfarer sent a letter to Ms. Lively's counsel claiming that they had recently been retained by Wayfarer to, quote, conduct a neutral, third-party investigation of Blake Lively's complaint for sexual harassment, retaliation, failure to investigate, prevent and or remedy harassment, and aiding and abetting harassment. Wayfarer's outside investigation counsel asked to interview Ms. Lively and to have an introductory call with her counsel first. 135. Ms. Lively's counsel engaged in an introductory call with Wayfarer's outside investigation counsel and another investigator on February 12, 2025. See letter from Ms. Lively's counsel to investigation counsel, February 14, 2025, attached hereto as Exhibit E. The investigators acknowledged that Wayfarer had a legal, quote, mandate to conduct an investigation and confirmed that Wayfarer had not previously conducted any such investigation. 136. The investigators confirmed that 1. Wayfarer controlled the investigation budget and the documents and information that the investigators would receive. 2. The investigation would be attorney-client privilege, and that as the holder of the attorney-client privilege, Wayfarer would have the right to all the investigators' interview notes, memoranda, determinations, and conclusions, which Wayfarer could keep completely secret if it chose to do so. 3. The Wayfarer Parties Council would have the right to sit in on investigators' interviews with any the Wayfarer parties. And 4, it was entirely Wayfarer's decision as to whether the findings of the investigators were memorialized in a written report. And if there were a written report, it would be solely up to Wayfarer to decide whether that report would ever be provided to the cast and crew, Sony, or the general public. 137. The investigators acknowledged having read Miss Lively's complaint and confirmed that, quote, if these incidents occurred as alleged, there are significant problems within the organization that they will have to contend with. Yet the investigators conceded that they would not be making any recommendations for corrective actions that Wayfarers should take based on the investigation findings, which they described as beyond the scope of their work for Wayfarer. It would solely be up to Wayfarer to decide what to do, if anything. 138. Wayfarer's belated launch of an investigation in 2025 is a damning admission of Wayfarer's failure to investigate events that were reported to Wayfarer in 2023. It also demonstrates the hypocrisy of Wayfarer's claim that it simply wants all of the facts to be released for public consumption. A privileged and confidential internal investigation that is financed and controlled by the same Wayfarer executives who have been sued for sexual harassment and retaliation is not an exercise in transparency, but a sham. This is especially so when litigation has already been initiated that will allow for neutral fact finders to determine Wayfarer's liability based on documents and testimony under oath provided by Messrs. Baldoni, Heath, and Sarowitz. 139. The Wayfarer parties ignored their legal mandate to conduct an investigation in 2023 when they indisputably became aware of multiple HR complaints and their cynical attempt to launch a rigged, quote, investigation now makes a mockery of the legal obligations. And while it is helpful that Wayfarer has finally conceded its legal obligation to investigate sexual harassment and other concerns raised on the set of the film, Wayfarer continues to ignore its legal obligation to cease retaliating against Miss Lively for reporting those concerns. C. The parties negotiate a contract writer regarding Mr. Baldoni's and Mr. Heath's conduct on the set of It Ends With Us. 140. On May 2nd, 2023, the WGA, made up of two American labor unions representing more than 16,000 writers in film, television, radio, and online media, went on strike in connection with a labor dispute with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. 141. The film temporarily halted production in June 2023 as a result of WGA picketing. On June 15, 2023, Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni announced the continued halted production of the film due to the ongoing WGA strike and the lost days experienced from picketing. 142. While the WGA strike was underway on July 14, 2023, the American Actors Union, known as SAG-AFTRA, a labor union that represents about 160,000 people in the entertainment industry, including actors, recording artists, radio personalities, and other media professionals, began to strike due to a labor dispute with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. 143. The WGA strike ended on September 27, 2023, and the SAG-AFTRA strike ended on November 9, 2023. 144. Before returning to production, Miss Lively and a female cast member discussed their mutual dread at going back to the film set. On October 13, 2023, Miss Lively texted that cast member, sharing that she, quote, keeps getting hits of the experience in really upsetting ways. The female cast member agreed and expressed regret about the situation. 145. At this point, after Miss Lively and others had unsuccessfully attempted to address and resolve the ongoing problems on set and having significant concerns about the return to production, Ms. Lively worked with her attorneys to address the conditions described above and create a safe environment on set for herself and others. 146. On November 9th, 2023, Ms. Lively's attorneys provided Wayfarer's attorneys with a document entitled, quote, Protections for Return to Production, attached hereto as Exhibit A. 147. In conveying the protections for return to production document, Ms. Lively requested that Wayfarer agree to implement a plan that would enable everyone to return to work and complete the film with adequate protections to ensure a safe set moving forward. 148. On November 11th, 2023, counsel for Wayfarer indicated that, quote, Wayfarer, Sony, and production respectfully acknowledge that your client has concerns regarding safety, professionalism, and workplace culture. Although our perspective differs in many aspects, ensuring a safe environment for all involved is paramount, irrespective of differing viewpoints. Regarding your outlined requests, we find most of them not only reasonable, but also essential for the benefit of all parties involved. 149. On November 15, 2023, Wayfarer, through It Ends With Us Movie LLC, agreed to the terms in a contractual rider executed on January 19, 2024, and attached hereto as Exhibit B. 150. The provisions of the contractual rider directly track the misconduct that Ms. Lively contemporaneously reported. Among the contract's rider's provisions, what is to follow is the list again. A. The first provision required that, quote, an intimacy coordinator must be present at all times when Ms. Lively is on set. B. The second provision required that, quote, with respect to artists, any and all rehearsal, filming, reviewing of video playback or dailies, and or any other interaction with any scene involving simulated sex, nudity, and or partial nudity shall be restricted to those persons with essential business reasons for being present, essential personnel, as approved by Ms. Lively and Todd Black as further described in the nudity rider attached as Schedule 1. Nudity rider. C. The third provision required that, quote, there is to be no spontaneous improvising of any scenes involving intimate, sexual, physical touching, simulated sex, or nudity with respect to Ms. Lively. Scenes involving Ms. Lively that involves kissing, depictions of sexual intercourse, or any other intimate, sexual, physical touching must be contained in the screenplay, i.e. the most up-to-date draft approved by Ms. Lively and ready, choreographed in advance in the presence of the intimacy coordinator, and may only proceed as choreographed with the consent of all participants in advance. D. The fourth provision required that, quote, physical touching and or comments on Ms. Lively's physical appearance must only be made in connection with the character and scene work, not as to Ms. Lively personally, except as written into the screenplay or is strictly required in connection with makeup or costume preparation. There is to be no physical touching, including hugging, of Ms. Lively, her on-set personnel, and or her employees. E. The fifth provision required that, quote, there be no discussions with Ms. Lively of personal experiences with sex or nudity, including as it relates to conduct with spouses or others. F. The sixth provision required that, quote, no one will attempt to enter, interrupt, pressure, or request entrance to Ms. Lively's trailer while she is in a state of undress for any reason. The seventh provision required that, quote, there shall be no rehearsal or filming of Ms. Lively, including Ms. Lively's approved body double, of any nudity, partial nudity, and or simulated sex, except as expressly permitted in accordance with the nudity rider. Any such footage of Ms. Lively or Ms. Lively's body double previously shot without the nudity rider in place may not be used without Ms. Lively's and her legal representatives' prior written consent. G. The 10th provision required that, quote, there shall be no retaliation of any kind against Ms. Lively for raising concerns about the conduct described in this letter or for these requirements. Any changes in attitude, sarcasm, marginalization, or other negative behavior, either on set or otherwise, including during publicity and promotional work, as a result of these requests, is retaliatory and unacceptable and will be met with immediate action. H. The 12th provision required that, quote, Wayfarer will engage in additional experienced A-level producer approved by Ms. Lively, Todd Black is hereby approved, the approved producer, to actively supervise the production, including monitoring the safety of the cast and crew, ensuring compliance with the schedule, and overseeing logistics, problem solving, and creative issues, provided that company shall have the right to approve the agreement with the approved producer. I. The 15th provision required that any rehearsal or shooting involving Miss Lively or any other performer depicting the character of Lily that involves nudity, including partial nudity, or simulated sex must be conducted strictly in accordance with the nudity rider and must adhere to the approved script. J. The 16th provision provided that, quote, any and all day players that participate in any way in scenes with Miss Lively involving nudity, partial nudity, and or simulated sex must be engaged through customary industry talent agencies and not through personal connections of the director and or producer. K. The 17th provision, the 17th day of Christmas provision required that, quote, at Miss Lively's election, an all-hands in-person meeting before production resumes will include the director, the existing producers, the Sony representative, the approved producer, Miss Lively, and Ms. Lively's designated representatives to confirm and approve a plan for implementation of the above that will be adhered to for the physical and emotional safety of Ms. Lively, her employees, and all cast and crew moving forward. 151. The contract writer expressly referenced the parties' actor loan-out agreement dated May 5, 2023, and deemed the terms and conditions incorporated into that agreement. Citation 21. 152. On December 4th, 2023, Angie Giannetti reached out to Miss Lively to acknowledge that Miss Lively's experience on set had been, quote, beyond challenging, and to reiterate her own and Sony's support for Miss Lively and her relief that Todd Black, who was brought in to oversee the safety of the cast and crew, was now on board. She stated, quote, so glad Todd Black is now in it and overseeing everything, but wanted to check in. Offer anything I can. I know this has been beyond challenging, to say the least. We at the studio want to support you best we can. Screenshot of an email from Angie Giannetti to Blake that says, hi Blake, it's Angie. I just tried your cell a few times, but call wouldn't go through. So glad Todd is in it now and overseeing everything, but wanted to check in. Offer anything I can. I know this has been beyond challenging, to say the least. We at studio want to support you best we can. I will be on set for majority of shoot other than a few days around the long MLK weekend when I have to be in LA for some doctor appointments with my son. Let me know if there's a good time to try you, Angie. 153. The, quote, all hands in person meeting provided for in the contract writer occurred on January 4th, 2024 before production resumed as described above. The meeting was not an ambush, nor was it a surprise. It was precisely the meeting called for under the contract writer. The meeting was attended by Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, producer Alex Sachs, producer Todd Black, and Sony's Angie Giannetti, as well as Miss Lively and her husband, who attended at Miss Lively's request as another designated representative, as provided for in the contract, given the subject matter of the meeting. I feel like kind of like how the families of doctors don't really want their family member treating them because, you know, the emotional implications or complications. I feel like using Ryan in this role is kind of this similar concept. My opinion. 154. At the January 4th, 2024 meeting, the parties discussed a list of 20 examples of the behaviors that gave rise to the contract writer from her contemporaneous notes. These behaviors are listed in full earlier in this complaint at paragraph 3. 155. Neither Mr. Baldoni nor Mr. Heath denied the veracity of Miss Lively's examples. 156. Miss Lively requested that Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath agree that such behaviors would no longer take place as memorialized in the language of the writer, and Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath agreed. 157. Production of the film resumed on January 5th, 2024, and concluded February 9th, 2024. On January 14th, 2024, before all of the cast had returned to the set, Miss Lively reassured one cast member that, quote, "You'll enjoy it this time, and you don't need to hug anyone is the best part." Miss Lively continued, "And he won't touch you, or shouldn't. I don't think he or Jamie will." Miss Lively said that she felt, quote, "solid. It's a professional set, and we're getting good work." 158. That, quote, "professional set" was the result of an 8-month process in which Miss Lively attempted privately to resolve concerns of misconduct and sexual harassment by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Wayfarer failed to investigate those concerns, leaving it to Miss Lively to negotiate for workplace protections to remedy the toxic environment on set. Understanding the risk she was taking by speaking up, Miss Lively asked and Wayfarer agreed in a contract not to retaliate against her in any way, including in the press. While Miss Lively remained disturbed by her experiences, she trusted that Wayfarer would honor the contract it signed. Instead, the Wayfarer parties launched a vicious and well-funded retaliation campaign against her, which has grown more aggressive and harmful over the past several months. Miss Lively led the edit of Sony's cut of the film, which was the version released in theaters. 159. Mr. Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties have falsely claimed that Miss Lively, quote, "took over the movie" as a self-aggrandizing power play. The defendant's entire accusation would rely on Miss Lively and others fabricating malicious claims nearly a year before an edit, though Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath repeatedly engaged in inappropriate behavior with witnesses and corroborators in real time. And then, even more complicated, their accusation would have required Miss Lively to rely on the hope that the Wayfarer parties would sign a document acknowledging and agreeing to cease the detailed and specific misconduct described in her claims after writing letters of apology to other female cast 8 months before. And also, most critically, the supposed master plan they absurdly accused Miss Lively of would rely on the hope that Wayfarer would never, in that 1.5-year process, launch an HR investigation to clear their, quote, "innocent" names, but instead allow their film to be, quote, "stolen" from them. 160. The assertion that Miss Lively bullied her way into edit room is not only false, but it was not even necessary. If she was not happy with the film, she could have easily just moved on to her next project. She had offers for directing jobs before, during, and since the film. If she wanted to direct, she could do that at any time and without having to deal with the Wayfarer parties, whom she very clearly wanted nothing to do with. 161. The story of the edit of the film is not relevant to Miss Lively's claims of sexual harassment and retaliation. It is a red herring designed to distract the public away from the grave misconduct by the defendants. 162. The Sony cut is the film that was chosen to be released in theaters. Miss Lively led the Sony cut with their support, working in close collaboration with Sony and Colleen Hoover. 163. Sony released the film's trailer on May 16, 2024. The next day, a Sony executive wrote Miss Lively about the, quote, "huge response" from the public to that release, calling it a, quote, "beautiful start," and thanking Miss Lively for her contributions. In a screenshot of an email from Angie Giannetti to Blake, it says, "Hi there, I'm sure Josh is updating you on the huge response to the trailer. 108 million views in 24 hours. Just incredible. But I'm texting to thank you. I know how hard you worked on making that trailer perfect, round after round with creative advertising, and all while you're shooting, working on the cut, mother of four, and on and on and on. Still, a long way till August 9th, but an incredible launch. Fans are so excited." And learned from publisher this morning, Amazon sold 6,000 copies of the book in 12 hours after the trailer dropped. A beautiful start, and thank you for making it so, Angie. 164. On June 19, 2024, one of the film's producers described Miss Lively's edit of the film as, quote, "excellent," and her work as, quote, truly beautiful. 165. On August 11, 2024, after the film's release, Sony executive Ms. Giannetti wrote to Miss Lively, quote, Blake, $50 million! Your blood, sweat, tears, brilliant smarts, heart, and soul in every single frame. My God, it's incredible. Thank you 50 million times, and it's only Saturday night. And there's a screenshot of an email from Angie to Blake saying exactly that. 166. The story Mr. Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties have told since Miss Lively filed her opening complaint is completely at odds with their behavior when trying to produce and market the film. Before Miss Lively sued, Mr. Baldoni and the Wayfarer parties were perfectly happy to exploit Miss Lively's star power, as well as her access to A-level filmmakers, editors, and more. And notwithstanding their complaints today that Miss Lively supposedly seized control of Mr. Baldoni's film, that did not stop Mr. Baldoni from proudly marketing the film as his work on release. Indeed, although Mr. Baldoni privately confessed that he did not even see the final cut of the film until the premiere, he repeatedly and publicly took credit for the film, while Miss Lively generally downplayed her contributions. In a screenshot of text messaging between Justin Baldoni and editor number 2, Justin writes, well, if you decide to change your mind last minute, let me know, and let's figure it out together. I'm going to be there. That's just different timing and holding areas and theaters and all the things you can imagine. I mean, it's still our film. Editor number 2 says, it would be very hard for me to sit and watch the, quote, final film for the first time at the premiere. Just cheer for us when our names come up. Sending all love. Justin says, okay, yeah, I haven't seen it either. 167. The irony of Wayfarer's complaints should be lost on no one. It is Mr. Sarowitz, Mr. Baldoni, and Mr. Heath that have reaped the greatest financial benefits from Miss Lively's hard work, about which they now complain. The film quickly became Wayfarer's most lucrative project, to the record-breaking tune of over $350 million. Reveling in the financial success of the film they now incredibly accused Miss Lively of hijacking, Mr. Sarowitz boasted in one interview that the film was, quote, #1 in the country as of August 13, 2024. Citation 22. When one interviewer congratulated Mr. Sarowitz on the film's impressive $50 million opening weekend, Mr. Sarowitz responded that the film had actually grossed, quote, $80 million worldwide, about 2.5 times what Wayfarer expected, remarking, quote, we're thrilled with that. Citation 23. Once the film was well established in theaters, Wayfarer took to Instagram to promote the film's addition to streaming service giant Netflix, encouraging users to, quote, watch the blockbuster film at home, citation 24, and later celebrated that the film was the, quote, #1 movie in the U.S. on Netflix, citation 25. 168. It seems so long as Miss Lively stayed silent about Wayfarer's misconduct, defendants were content to continue collecting paychecks from the film they now claim she hijacked. It is only once she spoke out about the sexual harassment and retaliation to which defendants subjected her that they decided to attempt to convince the public that Miss Lively ruined the film. And defendants have done so even though, throughout the process, Mr. Baldoni engaged in stunning duplicity, praising Miss Lively to her face and in public, while secretly disparaging her in private and plotting to, quote, bury her alongside the truth of his own behavior. 169. Not to be outdone, Mr. Sarowitz loudly promoted the film and its box office successes, all while financing defendants' efforts to, quote, destroy Miss Lively and her family. Even though the film had, quote, turned out very well, and Wayfarer had, quote, made a lot of money on it in late August of 2024, Mr. Sarowitz confessed to a third party that if Miss Lively or Miss Reynolds, quote, ever cross the line, ever, then I will go after them. He declared, quote, I will protect the studio like Israel protected itself from Hamas. There were 39,000 dead bodies. There will be 2 dead bodies when I'm done, minimum. Well, not dead, but you're dead to me, so that kind of dead. But dead to a lot of people. I mean, if they ever get me to that point, then I'll make it worth their while, because I'm going to spend a lot of money to make sure the studio is protected. He made this disturbing pledge after divulging to another individual at the film's New York premiere that he was prepared to spend $100 million to ruin the lives of Miss Lively and her family. Miss Lively and other cast and crew promoted the film according to the marketing plan. 170. In connection with the film's public release, Miss Lively and the rest of the cast actively promoted the film in accordance with the marketing plan for the film, attached hereto as Exhibit C. Wayfarer had embraced and, on information and belief, had formally approved of this marketing plan. 171. The marketing plan and related talking points expressly required Miss Lively, as well as all other cast and crew engaged in promotional activities, to, quote, focus more on her character's strength and resilience, as opposed to describing the film as a story about domestic violence, and to, quote, avoid talking about this film that makes it feel sad or heavy. It's a story of hope. 172. As detailed above, Miss Lively and fellow cast members promoted the film in accordance with the talking points and marketing plan during appearances on red carpets, interviews, press junkets, fan events, and pop-up experiences leading up to the film's release. 173. Mr. Baldoni and his team, including Mr. Sarowitz, had publicly embraced the same marketing plan. In early May 2024, Mr. Baldoni appeared at a floral-themed trailer launch event, which included him personally making flower bouquets for influencers, a photo opportunity, and film-branded latte art. 174. Around the same time on July 30th, 2024, how is that at the same time? It's like 2 months later. I know, okay. The official Instagram page for the film published a post for International Friendship Day about, quote, how to plan the perfect girls' night out, and advising fans to, quote, grab your besties, quote, grab your tickets, and, quote, wear your florals. 2 days later, on August 2nd, the official TikTok page for the film posted videos of fans attending early screenings of the film in floral outfits, with one influencer stating, quote, grab your girls, wear your florals, and go see it. 175. As late as August 11, 2024, Mr. Heath was defending Sony's marketing plan as, quote, brilliant and, quote, fantastic. In an email to Sony on that date, Mr. Heath requested a call to, quote, take some learnings from some of the online commentary about the film's marketing, yet, quote, to be clear, we're not saying it's been inappropriately marketed in any way. In fact, you all have been brilliant. Thank you. Extremely honored to be partners with you. It's been fantastic. The proof is in the pudding. He concluded by congratulating Sony, quote, on a huge success. 176. In advance of the release of the film, nearly all cast members chose to appear in public separately from Mr. Baldoni, given his on-set behavior. Mr. Baldoni became concerned that the public would discover that, quote, something is much bigger under the surface, on information and belief, alluding to the complaints lodged by Miss Lively and others. 177. At that point, Mr. Baldoni pivoted away from the film's marketing plan to explain his absence from the rest of the cast. He shifted his focus away from a message of female triumph to instead capitalize on female trauma. After the film's premiere, Mr. Baldoni changed his Instagram profile, canceled light-hearted social media posts, and instructed his team to look for survivor reactions and support, all in an effort to quickly shift his own public narrative to focus solely on survivors and domestic violence organizations. 178. Miss Abel cautioned Mr. Baldoni that the shift might be, quote, too drastic too soon. Still, Mr. Baldoni insisted on a, quote, TikTok strategy, and that his promotional activities for the film should seek to amplify what he described as, quote, survivor content. In a screenshot from an email from Justin to Jennifer, it reads, hey, just landed. What is the TikTok strategy? I'd like you guys to start posting me only talking about domestic violence and clips from why this movie is so important. 179. The team followed Mr. Baldoni's instructions. For her part, Ms. Abel advised Mr. Baldoni on August 8, 2024, that creating content about domestic violence would be acceptable following his initial marketing push. Quote, "It doesn't feel performative now that you've done major substantial press on the topic." In a screenshot from Jennifer Abel, it says exactly that. 180. On August 11, 2024, Ms. Abel cynically advised Mr. Baldoni that exploiting content relating to survivors of domestic violence could help advance his public image. In her words, she advised Mr. Baldoni that pushing out, quote, survivor content first thing tomorrow would, quote, be helpful for the news cycle. In a screenshot of an email from Jennifer to Justin, Jamie, and other redacted people, it states, theater surprise, and then I think survivor content first thing tomorrow morning, which then will be helpful for the news. 181. By repositioning Mr. Baldoni's marketing of the film on information and belief, Mr. Baldoni hoped to create the false impression that he had chosen not to appear alongside other cast members. Mr. Baldoni directed his team to share on his public Instagram feed the private messages he had received from survivors sharing their stories of domestic violence with him. Mr. Baldoni's team talked him out of these ideas, writing that they, quote, do not recommend using private DMs as content. In an email from Justin to Jennifer Abel, it states, also, I need you guys to really be on all the stories I'm tagged in. I think you should let all people DM me so you can see people's reactions to the film, and I can be reposting everything. These next 36 hours are crucial, and we need to be on it, looking at everything, finding the most emotional and touching content from survivors supporting this film, and reposting. Need you to be finding survivors sharing their stories and amplifying them on my page and TikTok. 182. Mr. Baldoni went so far as proposing to share a video of a woman's, quote, birth moment, but his team talked him out of it, warning that it might be, quote, perceived as weird and was, quote, too intimate. Still, Mr. Baldoni's team was more than willing to deploy survivor stories, reactions, and images to protect Mr. Baldoni's image. F. Mr. Baldoni and his team formulate a retaliatory plan. 183. By the time defendants launched their campaign to, quote, bury Miss Lively, Wayfarer knew the details of Miss Lively's and others' concerns, the complaints raised regarding Mr. Baldoni's and Mr. Heath's behavior, Miss Lively's contractual rider, and the January 4, 2024 meeting to discuss their behavior. In addition, Wayfarer's press team knew about the claims by Miss Lively and others, as well as the protections rider, as Wayfarer sent the materials to them in November 2023 and even referred to Miss Lively's complaints internally. 184. On January 13th, 2024, just 9 days after the January 4th, 2024 meeting in which Miss Lively detailed each of concerns, Miss Abel reacted to an E-News story depicting a kiss on the set of the film, stating, quote, it's so cringy. When her colleague responded that, quote, Blake was probably grossed out too, Miss Abel responded, quote, yeah, and filed a cease and desist. On information belief, Miss Abel was referring Miss Lively's complaints regarding Mr. Baldoni. 185. As early as May 2024, Mr. Baldoni told his team that they needed a plan to get ahead of the claims against him in the event they were to go public. Specifically, Mr. Baldoni wrote, quote, just want you guys to have a plan. Plans make me feel more at ease. 186. May 17, 2024. Mr. Baldoni texted his publicist, Jennifer Abel, that Miss Lively's husband had blocked him on social media, stating, quote, we should have a plan for if she does the same when the movie comes out. Citation 26. It is worth noting that his, quote, plan was not conceived of to respond to any particular allegation. It was entirely about managing the public perception Mr. Baldoni feared might follow the theoretical possibility that Ms. Lively might decide to unfollow his social media accounts. Far from taking a moment to listen to the woman in his life, Mr. Baldoni apparently thought he should be ready to use his, quote, louder voice in the event that his co-star did nothing other than unfollow his social media accounts. 187. In June 2024, a month after Mr. Baldoni's first promotional event for the film, Miss Lively and others in the cast fulfilled their first publicity obligation for the film without Mr. Baldoni. They did not publicly discuss the misconduct that had occurred on set, nor did they ever suggest to Wayfarer or Mr. Baldoni that they intended to discuss their concerns publicly. Yet, on June 20th, 2024, Miss Abel texted Mr. Heath her concern, quote, "We can't have fans starting to guess why JB is left out of this stuff." 188. Likewise, Mr. Baldoni strategized with his publicist, Miss Abel, about various ways in which they might cover up or explain away his on-set misconduct. On June 24, 2024, for example, Mr. Baldoni proposed a, quote, offensive move showing his neurodivergence and some of the attributes that come with it to explain that, quote, anything that he's been accused of was social awkwardness and impulsive speech. Citation 27. In a screenshot of an email from Justin to Jennifer, it states, "Hey guys, one thing I think I want to do is the Dr. Amen show. Matt, I know you have your feelings about it, but his practice saved my friend Miranda's life a few months ago. With everything going on, I want to have an offensive move showing my neurodivergence and some of the attributes that come with it so I can start talking about it. Most anything that I've been, quote, accused of is social awkwardness and impulsive speech, and I think me sitting down with him and just looking at my brain and talking about some of these things will be helpful for me." 189. The same day, Ms. Abel reviewed again the agreed-upon list of protections that formed the basis for the contractual rider. 190. On July 24, 2024, Ms. Abel emailed Mr. Heath and others, requesting, quote, the legal letter that was sent to Ms. Lively and her team, stating, quote, per our conversation, we will go through point by point and draft context surrounding each situation. We can then flag what we are missing that would be helpful to arm us in the case we need to refute any of the claims. 191. On July 26, 2024, Mr. Baldoni sent Ms. Abel a Variety article about Francis Ford Coppola's inappropriate behavior on set during production of his movie Megalopolis, including his alleged kissing of cast and crew as described by, quote, unnamed sources. In conveying the article, Mr. Baldoni stated, quote, this is the shit I'm sure they want to do. Unnamed sources, etc. Citation 28. 192. On July 29, 2024, Mr. Baldoni and Ms. Abel discussed a proposal to get ahead of any potential publicity regarding Ms. Lively's HR complaints against him with a, quote, social and digital combat plan. G. Wayfarer engages Melissa Nathan, tag Mr. Wallace, and Street Relations on behalf of Mr. Baldoni to launch a retaliation campaign against Ms. Lively. 193. As the film's release date of August 9th, 2024 drew closer, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, Wayfarer, Ms. Abel, and others continued to pursue a strategy on behalf of Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer to, quote, arm themselves against the possibility that Ms. Lively or others might go public with the claims against Mr. Baldoni or Wayfarer. 194. This plan took shape with Wayfarer's retention, on behalf of Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni, of Ms. Nathan, which occurred on or around July 31st, 2024. 195. Ms. Nathan is a crisis manager. On or about June 20th, 2024, Ms. Nathan launched TAG. 196. TAG markets itself as a, quote, team of crisis specialists and communications experts that, quote, redefines the rules of reputation management. Citation 29. TAG's website states, quote, at TAG, it's more than just creating a powerful narrative. It's knowing how to navigate that narrative toward continued success and a lasting legacy. Citation 30. 197. TAG's website states that it, quote, offers comprehensive communication services for individuals, businesses, and corporations looking to invest in reputation management and the growth of their unique public profiles. TAG specializes in crisis communications, having managed some of the biggest public-facing crises to date, and utilizes that fast-paced, reputation-first mindset with all of its day-to-day clients, which span a variety of industries, including entertainment, media, business, and sports. Citation 31. TAG's services include messaging and narrative development, media relations, crisis communications and management, and digital and social strategy, among others. Citation 32. 198. On July 31st, 2024, Wayfarer had started to put together a timeline of events to be shared with Ms. Nathan and TAG. 199. According to TAG's own planning document, the purpose of Ms. Nathan's engagement was to help Mr. Baldoni, quote, get ahead of the narrative and mitigate bad press that might arise from Ms. Lively's and others' HR complaints becoming public by engaging in techniques such as, quote, rapid response communication system and, quote, cataloging third-party advocates willing to provide a potential quote or engage with reporters on Mr. Baldoni's and Mr. Heath's behalf to mitigate negative narratives from a source outside of Wayfarer. See Exhibit D at 1 through 2. 200. On August 1st, 2024, before any of the cast sat down for interviews at the film's press junkets, Ms. Abel stated to Mr. Heath and Wayfarer personnel that she had held an in-person meeting with a contributor to People, Fox News, In Touch, and Us Weekly. Ms. Abel explained that during the meeting, she had, quote, fully briefed the contributor of, quote, the situation with Ms. Lively. Ms. Abel stated that the contributor was, quote, armed and ready to take this story of Blake weaponizing feminism, and assured Mr. Heath that the contributor, quote, will do anything for us. The irony of Mr. Baldoni accusing anyone of, quote, weaponizing feminism, let alone the women who had edited the film for which Mr. Baldoni was poised to take credit, does not appear to have been discussed at Ms. Abel's dinner with her long-time friend. In a screenshot of an email from Jennifer Abel to Jamie Heath and another, it says, thanks for the call. Confidentially, I'm out to dinner with a friend of 12 plus years who writes for People magazine, Fox News, In Touch, Us Weekly, and she is fully briefed of the situation and is armed and ready to take the story of Blake weaponizing feminism to any of her outlets the minute we give her the green light. She hates Blake, has heard this story before, and will do anything for us, just FYI. 201. On or around August 2nd, 2024, Ms. Abel connected the contributor with Ms. Nathan. Subsequently, Ms. Nathan engaged directly with media sources on behalf of Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer regarding Mr. Baldoni, Ms. Lively, and the film. 202. On August 2nd, 2024, Ms. Nathan, Mr. Baldoni, Ms. Abel, and others had a phone call to discuss the services that Ms. Nathan and TAG would provide for Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer. 203. Subsequently, on August 2nd, 2024, TAG circulated a document to Mr. Baldoni and others entitled, quote, Scenario Planning. It ends with us, as described above. See Supra at paragraph 31. See also Exhibit D. 204. Of note, the scenario planning document states, quote, there are several potential scenarios at play here which we should be prepared for should Ms. Lively and her team make her grievances public. See Exhibit D at 1. 205. The scenario planning document provides TAG's, quote, recommendation, quote, to get ahead of this narrative. ID. This included suggesting misleading messaging that 1. Production members lost their jobs due to Ms. Lively's takeover and insisted upon involvement. 2. Ms. Lively, quote, involved her husband to create an imbalance of power between her and Mr. Baldoni. 3. Ms. Lively has a, quote, less than favorable reputation in the industry. And 4. Ms. Lively had, quote, a clear, likely motive to bully her way into buying the rights for It Starts With Us, the sequel to the film currently owned by Wayfarer, ID at 2. 206. The scenario planning document states that TAG could, quote, also explore planting stories about the weaponization of feminism and how people in Blake's circle like Taylor Swift have been accused of utilizing these tactics to, quote, bully into getting what they want. Idea 4. 207. Upon review of the scenario planning document, Mr. Baldoni informed Mr. Heath that he was, quote, not in love with the document they sent. Not sure I'm feeling the protection I felt on the call. 208. Mr. Heath responded, quote, that's the most important part of this is how quickly they can shut things down and place stories in your favor. 209. Later the same day, Miss Abel conveyed to Miss Nathan that Mr. Baldoni was questioning whether the plan was aggressive enough, texting that, quote, Mr. Baldoni wanted to feel like Miss Lively could be buried. Ms. Nathan responds, quote, of course, but you know when we send over documents, we can't send over the work we will or could do because, well, that could get us in a lot of trouble. We can't write it down to him. We can't write, we will destroy her. Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. In a screenshot of an email from Jennifer to Melissa, it states, you can of course do that, but I do think he needs to know. I'm going to confidentially send you something. He's texting me and Jamie on the side just to arm you before his call. I think you guys need to be tough and show the strength of what you guys can do in these scenarios. He wants to feel like she can be buried. In a screenshot email from Melissa to Jennifer, it says, well, of course, but you know when we send over documents, we can't send over the work we will or could do because that could get us in a lot of trouble. Another email from Melissa to Jennifer states, we can't write it down to him. We can't write, we will destroy her. We will go do this. We will do this. We will do this. We will do this. Email from Jennifer to Melissa, it states, well, of course not. But I told him that's the point of talking it through. Screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer, it says, he has to look at it as an information document for us to be armed with. That's all. Imagine if a document saying all the things that he wants ends up in the wrong hands. 2:10. On August 4th, Miss Abel texted Miss Nathan stated, quote, I'm having reckless thoughts of wanting to plant pieces this week of how horrible Blake is to work with, just to get ahead of it. She's putting us through hell. Miss Lively was, in fact, doing nothing other than engaging in the approved marketing plan for the film at that time. Miss Nathan responded, quote, same, and indicated that she had already spoken to the Daily Mail. In a screenshot of an email from Jennifer to Melissa, it says, I'm having reckless thoughts of wanting to plant pieces this week of how horrible Blake is to work with. Just to get ahead of it. She's putting us through hell. In screenshots of emails from Melissa to Jennifer, it says, same. Am I already off record spoke to the editor Daily Mail because she's my friend. She's ready when we are. 2:11. As set forth above, on August 5th, 2024, Mr. Baldoni sent Miss Abel a screenshot of a thread on X regarding another female public figure's alleged, quote, history of bullying many women. Mr. Baldoni stated, quote, this is what we would need. Citation 33. 2:12. Miss Abel responded, quote, yes, I literally just spoke to Melissa about this on the break, about what we discussed last night for social and digital. She continued, quote, focus on Reddit, TikTok, Instagram. 2:13. The next day, even though Miss Nathan and Tag had already begun performing work on behalf of Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Nathan texted a text chain with Miss Abel and Mr. Heath, providing pricing quotes ranging from $75,000 to $175,000 for Tag's crisis mitigation services. 2:14. Ms. Nathan explained the quotes as follows. A. Quote 1, $175K. This will be for a 3 to 4 month period and includes website to discuss, full Reddit, full social account takedowns, full social crisis team on hand for anything, engage with audiences in the right way, start threads of theories to discuss. This is the way to be fully 100% protected. B. Quote 2, $25K per month, minimum 3 months as it needs to seed, same as above. This will be for creation of social fan engagement to go back and forth with any negative accounts, helping to change narrative and stay on track. Ms. Nathan stated, quote, all of this will be most importantly untraceable. There is a lot more to both of these quotes, but easier to discuss via phone in terms of capabilities and what I have personally experienced in and out of crisis scenarios. Screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer states, hi Jen, so incredibly glad that the press went so well today. And from what I know, Justin felt incredibly supported. He is lucky to have you all. We took the day today to do some research and get digital quotes in from the two teams we use that get the best results. As you are both aware, we are in a predicament that we just don't know the outcome of right now. Saying that, full transparency is key here. We have seen the most innocuous issues turn giant due to social, or the hugest crisis have no effects on social whatsoever. You just cannot tell at this stage. But Blake does have some of the TS fan base, so we will be taking it extremely seriously. We also understand audience is not solely JB fan base, but the studio, so it is covering all bases time. Quote 1, 175K. This will be for a 3 to 4 month period and includes website to discuss, full Reddit, full social account, takedown, full social crisis team on hand for anything, engage with audiences in the right way, start threads of theories to discuss. This is the way to be fully 100% protected. Quote 2, 25K per month, minimum 3 months as it needs to seed, same as above. This will be for creation of social fan engagement to go back and forth with any negative accounts, helping to change narrative and stay on track. All of this will be most importantly untraceable. There's a lot more to both of these quotes, but easier to discuss via phone in terms of capabilities and what I have personally experienced in and out of crisis scenarios. Either way, I do feel it is better to be safe, but I do realize costs are something I'm sure you did not count on when you took on this project, nor the situation. Let me know when you would like to discuss more. Around MPT tomorrow. 2015, on August 7th, 2024, Ms. Abel and Ms. Nathan viewed and referred to their shared work on behalf of Mr. Baldoni and Wayfarer as a, quote, social combat plan. In a screenshot of emails from Jennifer to Melissa, it states, I think we really need to put the social combat plan then into motion. In an email from Melissa to Jennifer, it states, so do I. 216, on information and belief, tag engaged Mr. Jed Wallace around this same time in early August 2024 to design and implement their, quote, social combat plan. 217, Mr. Wallace identifies as a self-employed public relations consultant and, on information and belief, has described himself as a, quote, hired gun with a, quote, proprietary formula for defining artists and trends. 218, on information and belief, Mr. Wallace specializes in executing confidential and, quote, untraceable campaigns across various social media platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, Reddit, and X, to shape public perception of his clients and their adversaries and to perpetuate those perceptions. 219, Mr. Wallace himself has no online presence. He does not appear to have any public profiles on Facebook, Instagram, X, or LinkedIn. One Los Angeles publicist recently stated publicly, quote, I imagine Jed has no interest in having his name out there. I imagine all his work is word of mouth and he doesn't want to be known because if he's the guy who makes things untraceable, that's the value. Citation 34. 220. Mr. Wallace owns and serves as the Director, President, and Secretary of Street Relations. Street Relations self-describes as a, quote, crisis mitigation firm engaged by clients to help navigate real-life human crisis, threats, trauma, and mental health concerns. It helps primarily families and individuals when they find themselves unjustly attacked, extorted, doxxed, swatted, scammed, or need help navigating through the most frightening situations. Street Relations roster of clients include high-profile and high-net-worth clients for whom it performs public relations services, including by contracting with other public relations and brand management firms to perform discrete work that facilitate larger public relations strategies. 221. Mr. Wallace and defendant's counsel, Brian Friedman, have a close relationship that predates this litigation. In an August 13th, 2024 text, Ms. Nathan inquired about whether she should create a signal thread between herself, Ms. Abel, and Mr. Wallace, quote, in case you need Mr. Wallace to connect you to Mr. Friedman, because they're very close. Screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer states, can I start a signal thread with you, me, and Jed, just in case you need him to connect you to Brian, because they're very close. 222. Defendant Tag and Miss Nathan also have a relationship with Mr. Wallace that preceded this litigation. As TAG confirmed in its answer to the first complaint Ms. Lively filed in this court, Ms. Nathan worked with Mr. Wallace on previous matters, and TAG retained him to work with them on behalf of defendant Wayfarer and Mr. Baldoni. 223. On information and belief, TAG retained Mr. Wallace and his company, Street Relations, to weaponize a digital army around the country, including in New York and Los Angeles, to create, seed, manipulate, and advance disparaging content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and internet chat forums, including the specific platforms Ms. Abel told Mr. Baldoni they would, quote, focus on: Reddit, TikTok, and Instagram. H. The Wayfarer parties engage in social manipulation with the assistance of Mr. Wallace. 224. On August 7th, 2024, after discussing the, quote, social combat plan with Ms. Nathan, Ms. Abel corresponded with other TAG personnel regarding what she referred to as, quote, social manipulation. Specifically, Ms. Abel inquired about the cost of, quote, social media mitigation and proactive fan posting to counter the narrative surrounding Mr. Baldoni, and whether what she had, quote, discussed with Ms. Nathan earlier regarding social manipulation from the separate team based in Hawaii was included in that fee. On information and belief, the referenced, quote, team based in Hawaii worked with Mr. Wallace and or at his discretion. 225. The same day, TAG indicated their intent to leverage, quote, social to, quote, quiet kill media coverage regarding public suspicions relating to Mr. Baldoni's disconnect from the film's cast. A screenshot from an email from Jennifer Abel to Jamie Hirth and Melissa Nathan. The body says, thanks, Katie. Just for clarity so we understand, does this cover your initial fee plus what we discussed in terms of social media mitigation and proactive fan posting to counter the narrative, or is this in addition to the $15K previously agreed upon fee for TAG and does not include what we discussed with MN earlier regarding social manipulation from the separate team based in Hawaii? In short, is the total fee incurred by Wayfarer $30K, or is there more required to ensure we are properly, quote, 226. The next day, on August 8, 2024, the TAG team met with Mr. Wallace and his team to, quote, bring them up to speed so they can hit the ground running. In the screenshot of an email from Jennifer Abel to Jed Wallace to Melissa Nathan, the body says, I am so sorry. I'm in morning press from 6:30 a.m. on, and we head straight to Chicago. TAG team, is this something you can bring them up to speed on so they can hit the ground running? I'll have some freedom later in the afternoon to connect, but don't want to hold this up. 227. On information and belief, following that meeting, Mr. Wallace was in regular contact with most of the defendants. 228. For example, on August 9, 2024, Ms. Abel, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, Ms. Nathan, and other members of the TAG team texted to discuss that the, quote, narrative that was, quote, shifting online to pointing finger at Ryan being overly involved. In response to a text from Mr. Baldoni, a TAG employee responded, quote, we've flagged to Jed and his team as well. 229. On August 13, 2024, the Hollywood Reporter announced the retention of Ms. Nathan and TAG on August 13, 2024. That report stated, in part, quote, the news comes days after sleuths flooded TikTok with speculation about an alleged rift between Baldoni and his cast and crew, including co-star and producer Blake Lively, as well as Hoover. Chatter spiked when fans noticed Baldoni's absence from joint press events and the lack of group photos of Lively and Baldoni together at the New York premiere August 6. Some also pointed out that neither Lively or Hoover nor the rest of the cast follow Baldoni on Instagram, though he follows them. Citation 35. 230. Ms. Abel, Ms. Nathan, Mr. Wallace, Street Relations, and others employed or engaged by TAG perpetrated a retaliation scheme against Ms. Lively in collusion with Mr. Sarowitz, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Wayfarer. This scheme was what TAG described as a, quote, social manipulation plan relying on direct and constant media engagement, the seeding of content on traditional and social media platforms, the boosting of content, sometimes the very content that Tag and its affiliates have seeded, the suppressing of negative content about Mr. Baldoni, and the amplifying of negative content about Ms. Lively, including through engagement via comments on social media. 231. When media sources have direct inquiries regarding potentially unflattering stories about Mr. Baldoni specifically, Ms. Nathan, Ms. Abel, and their teams worked to suppress those stories. 232. On August 8, 2024, Ms. Abel stated that the situation had moved, quote, from just monitoring and scenario planning to Ms. Nathan and me having to have an off-the-record conversation with outlets such as the Today Show. Ms. Abel noted that because of Ms. Nathan's relationships, those outlets were being, quote, kept at bay. 233. The next day, an employee of Tag texted a link to a salacious story about Ms. Lively's family and noted, quote, the tides are swirling around Ryan now, FYI. Along these same lines, the team had previously shared an upsetting TikTok video which called for Blake to, quote, to divorce Ryan, writing, quote, you guys will love this. Another Tag employee then described this post as, quote, very helpful. In a screenshot of an email from redacted to Jennifer Abel, it says, you guys will love this. Basically saying that Blake needs to divorce Ryan because he's made her into a meme. He's ruining her biggest movie of the year, forcing her to ostracize Justin, rewriting the script, etc. He's ruining her biggest movie of the year, forcing her to ostracize Justin, rewriting the script, etc. 234. On August 9, 2024, the day the film premiered, Ms. Abel and Ms. Nathan flagged social media accounts questioning Mr. Baldoni's misconduct to Mr. Wallace, directing Mr. Wallace to take, quote, serious actions on the social side in response. 235. That same day, Mr. Wallace reportedly told Ms. Nathan that, quote, we are crushing it on Reddit. Ms. Nathan relayed the statement to Ms. Abel in a text message, which appears to be a reference to efforts by Mr. Wallace to seed and influence online forums on Reddit, attacking Ms. Lively and defending Mr. Baldoni. In a screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer, it quotes Jed as saying, we are crushing it on Reddit. 236. Around the same time, threads on Reddit began to appear speculating about the feud between Ms. Lively and Mr. Baldoni, including in connection with allegations about competing cuts of the film. 237. On August 9, 2024, Ms. Nathan sent Ms. Abel 2 links to articles, one from The Hollywood Reporter entitled, quote, did Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni have a rift over It Ends With Us? Sleuthing TikTokers think so. And one from the Daily Mail entitled, quote, disturbing truth behind why Blake Lively and her It Ends With Us stars are feuding with Justin Baldoni. Citation 36. 238. The Daily Mail article reported on allegations that, quote, Justin Baldoni was chauvinistic and borderline abusive on the set of It Ends With Us, and discussed this and other claims with respect to the film and its cast in detail. Citation 37. 239. Ms. Abel stated to Ms. Nathan, quote, I can tell you've done a lot of work here, and continued, quote, nothing about being unsafe, fat comments, sexual, she concluded. Thank fucking God. Screenshots of emails from Jennifer to Melissa state, I can tell you've done a lot of work here. Nothing about being unsafe, fat comments, sexual. Thank fucking God. 240. On August 9th, 2024, Miss Nathan indicated to Miss Abel that she was on the phone with her sister, Sarah Nathan, a journalist at the New York Post and contributor at Page 6, and remarked that Mr. Baldoni's religion should be taken, quote, out for media coverage. She went on to state, quote, and mostly the misogynistic. In a screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer, it states, Baha'i needs to be out, and mostly the misogynistic. 241. Later the same day, Miss Nathan texted Miss Abel a link of an article on Page 6 by Sarah Nathan entitled, quote, Truth behind it ends with us feud rumors. Justin Baldoni made Blake Lively uncomfortable, sources say, stating, quote, I knew she would keep uncomfortable. Citation 38. 242. On August 9, 2024, Ms. Abel and Ms. Nathan discussed suppressing two stories that report Ms. Lively was, quote, uncomfortable on the set. 243. Ms. Nathan texted, quote, all press is so overwhelming. We've confused people. So much mixed messaging. It's actually really funny if you think about it. In a screenshot of an email from Jennifer to Melissa, it says, so are we in the clear now? And another one says, did we survive? And a screenshot from Melissa to Jennifer, it says, we survived. And another one from Melissa to Jennifer, it says, all press is so overwhelming. We've confused people. Just so much mixed messaging. And again, Melissa to Jennifer states, it's actually really funny if you think about it. 244. Miss Nathan further texted Miss Abel that the, quote, worst is over, and that Mr. Baldoni likely would not be, quote, canceled, corroborating that the nature of the ongoing campaign was designed to harm Miss Lively and conceal Mr. Baldoni's conduct on set. In a screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer, it states, I really think the worst is over. I do think the next few months definitely will be a tiny bit bumpy, but not canceled. 245. The following day, on August 10th, a member of the tag team advised that they had, quote, started to see a shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan instead of on Mr. Baldoni. This message by itself completely debunks defendants' self-serving efforts to mislead the public into thinking that all they did was respond reactively to media inquiries in order to correct the record. As the tag employee's text message confesses in real time, Mr. Baldoni's team, relying on Mr. Wallace and his team, had created a, quote, shift on social via their successful, quote, efforts to shift the narrative towards shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. This is, of course, precisely the objective outlined in Miss Nathan's strategic plan and precisely the result that Mr. Baldoni had sought. Screenshots of an email from Redacted to Jennifer state, hi team, so far extremely limited pickup on Daily Mail or Page 6. We'll continue to keep an eye out and send pieces as needed, but so far it's been steady coverage on pure speculation. We've also started to see a shift on social due largely to Jed and his team's efforts to shift the narrative toward shining a spotlight on Blake and Ryan. Again, we'll continue to send links and screenshots, but wanted to share an update in the meantime. 246. The same day Miss Abel celebrated Miss Nathan's suppression of stories that had apparently sought to reveal the existence of HR complaints as well as the effectiveness of their retaliatory campaign. She stated, quote, the narrative online is so freaking good and fans are still sticking up for Justin, and there literally has been no pickup of those two articles, which is actually shocking to me. But I see this as a total success, as does Justin. You did such amazing work, Ms. Nathan responded. So did you. Screenshot of an email from Jennifer to Melissa state, yes, I had some people text me too, and I just didn't respond. The narrative online is so freaking good, and fans are still sticking up for Justin, and there literally has been no pickup of those two articles, which is actually shocking to me, but I see this as a total success, as does Justin. Again, from Jennifer to Melissa says, you did such amazing work. Email from Melissa to Jennifer states, narrative is crazy good. So did you. 247. Ms. Nathan texted later that same day, quote, the majority of socials are so pro-Justin, and I don't even agree with half of them, lol. Screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer states what I just read. 248. Later in the same chain, also on August 10, 2024, Ms. Nathan and Ms. Abel continued to discuss the shift on social, with Ms. Nathan stating, quote, socials are really, really ramping up. She continued, quote, it's actually sad because it just shows you have people really want to hate on women. Ms. Abel agreed and attributed the hate against Ms. Lively to her unfollowing Mr. Baldoni on social media, writing, quote, she fucked herself by doing the unfollow thing and insisting on no photos together. Screenshots of emails from Melissa to Jennifer state, and socials are really, really ramping up. Again, Melissa to Jennifer, in his favor. She must be furious. Again, Melissa to Jennifer. It's actually sad because it just shows you that people really want to hate on women. Screenshot of email from Jennifer to Melissa state, I know, it is sad. Again, Jennifer to Melissa state, but then, don't be a cunt. Jennifer to Melissa state, she fucked herself by doing the unfollow thing and insisting on no photos together. 249. The following day, Miss Abel confirmed to Mr. Baldoni there had been, quote, nothing, very, very little pickup, and that fans, quote, believe the issue of the feud is because she took control of the movie. 250. In the days that followed, Miss Nathan and Miss Abel discussed, that is weird. Why would you say that the fans believe the issue? Why wouldn't you say that the fans know that the issue was? That just seems weird. 250. In the days that followed, Miss Nathan and Miss Abel discussed working with Mr. Wallace and his, quote, digital team to, quote, amplify or, quote, boost or to suppress certain narratives and posts on social media, including on TikTok. On any occasion, any number of Wayfarer or the social, quote, manipulation team could text the link to a positive story about Mr. Baldoni or a negative story about Miss Lively and ask that someone, quote, boost the story to the public or, quote, engage in the comments to fuel the desired narrative. 251. For instance, on August 10, 2024, Miss Abel sent a TikTok post of Mr. Baldoni and Miss Lively appearing to laugh together and wrote, quote, would be great for the digital team to boost this in any way possible. 252. On August 12, 2024, a tag team member circulated screenshots about, quote, speculation posts on social media, to which Miss Nathan responded that, quote, Jed also shot me a note and asked to schedule a Zoom conversation. 253. On August 13, 2024, the team discussed ways to use the, quote, digital team to, quote, amplify positive stories about Mr. Baldoni. 254. The next day, on August 14, 2024, Miss Abel stated, quote, I'll have our digital side boost this TikTok in the morning. And the reference TikTok, an individual whom Miss Lively has never met, responds to social media that Mr. Baldoni, quote, made Miss Lively uncomfortable and sad, calling it, quote, all nonsense. 255. On August 18, 2024, Mr. Baldoni circulated a TikTok video in which the poster criticized Miss Lively for not speaking about domestic violence in press interviews. A member of Miss Nathan's team responded that she would, quote, let digital know. 256. The same day, Miss Abel flagged to tag that, quote, this girl is claiming that Mr. Baldoni invited her up to his hotel room years ago. The tag team later stated, quote, let us chat to Jed as well on this. Screenshot of an email from Jennifer to redacted states as follows. So this girl is claiming that Justin invited her up to his hotel room years ago. I didn't want to share the vid, but Redacted did a screen record, and this is her account, so you guys can look at it. Part of me wants Redacted, his former assistant, to comment and say this never happened. Ridiculous. Screenshot of an email from Redacted to Redacted Melissa, Redacted Jennifer. It states as follows. Let us chat to Jed on this as well. 257. On August 18, 2024, Mr. Baldoni responded on the same thread about seeing comments on Instagram, quote, on random posts defending me by people who are private with no followers and they feel like bots. Miss Nathan responded stating that they, quote, do not have bots because, quote, bots look fake to anyone, and that, quote, the other team is doing something very specific in terms of what they do. I know Jamie and Jed connected on this. She explained further that, quote, any digital team these days is far more intelligent to utilize something so obvious. And a screenshot of an email from Justin to Jennifer, it says, hey tag team, I've been seeing some Instagram comments on random posts defending me by people who are private with no followers, and they feel like bots. Can you please confirm we're not doing any of that? I really don't want bots defending me, as it feeds into their potential narrative. Screenshot of an email from Melissa to Jennifer, it states, I can fully confirm we do not have bots. This is not also what we do. Bots look fake to anyone. The other team is doing something very specific in terms of what they do. I know Jamie and Jed connected on this. Bots and fan accounts also run pretty organically by now with the AI platforms and Google Analytics itself. There is no bot army. That's a myth these days. Any digital team these days is far more intelligent to utilize something so obvious. 258. During the same period of time, Miss Nathan, Miss Abel, and their teams were, quote, heavily monitoring, had media, quote, friendlies updating them, and worked to suppress unflattering commentary regarding Mr. Baldoni while spreading stories that were favorable to Mr. Baldoni. 259. For example, on August 9, 2024, Miss Abel circulated a screenshot of a post by a woman stating, quote, Justin, the creator of a show called My Last Days, exploits the struggles of individuals facing terminal illnesses for his own gain. He found my friend, who was battling a serious illness, and followed her life closely. Despite her grace in not speaking ill of him, I sensed from the start that something was deeply wrong. Justin weaponizes therapeutic language, presenting himself as thoughtful and supportive, yet his actions reveal a very different reality. He portrays himself as an ally to women and the vulnerable, but it's all a facade. He manipulates the vernacular of care to mask his true intentions. In reality, none of the proceeds from the show benefited the individuals he profiled. He even had the audacity to depict her hometown, a vibrant and affluent community, as a small, impoverished town. His portrayal was not just inaccurate, but insulting. Once the show aired, Justin took his profits and vanished, leaving nothing but a sense of exploitation in his wake. His behavior was not just tacky and gross. It was a betrayal of the very people he claimed to uplift. 260. In response to the post, Miss Abel stated, quote, I'm assuming this is not true in the slightest. Either way, we flagged to Jed and his team for more serious action on the social side. It is worth pausing to consider Miss Abel's reaction to this woman's post. Rather than asking Mr. Baldoni whether there's any truth to the allegations, Miss Abel instead declared that she was flagging the woman's post to Mr. Wallace, quote, for more serious action on the social side. Either way, meaning Miss Abel was calling for Mr. Wallace to take action against the woman without any regard to whether she was reporting the truth. 261. During the same period of time, when media sources inquired about HR complaints that were made on the set of the film, Miss Nathan, Miss Abel, and their teams worked to suppress coverage of these HR complaints. 261. During the same period of time, when media sources inquired about HR complaints that were made on the set of the film, Miss Nathan, Miss Abel, and their teams worked to suppress coverage of these HR complaints. 262. Further, on or around August 14th, 2024, media outlets directly inquired about HR complaints made on the set because they were, quote, being told there were at least 3 HR complaints filed against Justin Baldoni on the set of It Ends With Us, and inquired, quote, if the complaints were investigated and what the results were. 263. By this time, individuals at TAG, Miss Nathan and Miss Abel, were aware of the existence of complaints that were made regarding the on-set behavior of Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath, and sought clarity as to the specific HR complaints at issue in order to better counter them in the press. In a screenshot of an email from redacted to Melissa to Jennifer, it states, hey guys, regarding the TMZ thing, regarding the HR complaints, our understanding is that 2 were from blank and redacted regarding the sexy comments. Is the additional one from Blake regarding the thing with Jamie and her apartment in New York City? Just want to clarify. 264. Approximately 1 minute later, Miss Abel asserted the, quote, need to position the claims as, quote, claims that are already out there about the kiss and the weight comment, referencing earlier public reporting by TMZ on Mr. Baldoni's, quote, lingering kiss with Miss Lively, and Mr. Baldoni's comments regarding Miss Lively's weight on set. Citation 39. In a screenshot of an email from Jennifer to redacted to Melissa, redacted, I think we need to position it as the claims that are already out there about the kiss and the weight comment. 265. On or around the same date, Ms. Nathan directly engaged with several media platforms discussing the issue of the HR complaints made against Mr. Baldoni while on the set of the film. 266. On August 15th, 2024, Miss Nathan texted Miss Abel that, quote, DM hounded me regarding HR complaints. She stated that, quote, DM is not running any content about it, continuing, quote, Jen, this went so well, I'm fucking dying. I have to call you later in a bit and tell you how this went. It was genius. So, okay, we have the 4 majors standing down in HR complaints. I think we are fine on that bit. 267. During the same period of time, Miss Nathan and her team at TAG planted or otherwise were involved in generating or influencing the content publicly put forth on social media, including Reddit and TikTok, as well as online media sources. 268. For example, on August 13, 2024, various text messages were exchanged between Miss Abel and the journalist Sarah Nathan, who, as explained above, is Miss Nathan's sister, citation 40. These messages consisted of drafts of a story outlining Miss Lively's role in making final cuts to the film. 269. After Sarah Nathan circulated draft language related to Miss Lively's involvement in the different cuts of the film, Miss Abel sent Sarah Nathan revisions to the draft, which Sarah Nathan offered to, quote, amend. 270. On the same day, an article authored by Sarah Nathan titled, Blake Lively approved final cut of It Ends With Us amid feud with co-star director Justin Baldoni, was published in Page 6, owned by the New York Post, citation 41. 271. The article addressed, among other topics, Miss Lively's role in approving the final cut of the film, but emphasizes how Miss Lively, quote, contributed to almost every aspect of the film, that her husband, quote, wrote one of the most important scenes in the movie, and that she was, quote, begged to remove one of her song choices from the film, despite Mr. Baldoni's ownership of the, quote, rights to the book via his production company, Wayfarer. 272. The language contained in the article is almost a verbatim copy of the language exchanged between Sarah Nathan and Miss Abel via text and reflects multiple of Miss Abel's revisions to Sarah Nathan's original proposed draft. 273. TAG publicly shared this article on one or more social media platforms, including Reddit, prompting various negative comments in relation to Miss Lively and her husband and the narrative that Miss Lively, quote, steamrolled or, quote, bulldozed Mr. Baldoni and the film, quote, for her own personal gain. Citation 42. 274. In early August 2024, Miss Lively launched her hair care line, Blake Brown, which she spent 7 years building. The defendants have falsely claimed that the launch was timed with the film's release, but in reality, the launch was set nearly 1 year before the film's release date had been decided. It was not until May of 2024, when the film's release date was moved for the 3rd time, that it happened to land the same week as Miss Lively's hair care launch. When the Blake Brown hair care line was first launched, the media and social media response was overwhelmingly positive, and the launch of the product line at Target became the store's, quote, biggest hair care launch on record. Yet, at exactly the same moment that defendants launched their retaliatory campaign, powered on the digital side by Mr. Wallace and his team, the Instagram account of Blake Brown was flooded by harassing and derogatory comments, including many posted by user accounts that had no followers and no prior posts, most of which did not relate to the brand's products. To take just one example, one comment posted on the Blake Brown account by a user that, as of December 19, 2024, shows user metrics indicating 0 posts, 0 followers, and 0 following, commented, quote, how about you stop paying the media to trash and smear Justin? They would be a good start, you awful human being. Another user, also with 0 posts, 0 followers, and 0 following, posted, quote, we want Justin's cut of the movie. He actually cares about DV. Citation 43. 275. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Sarowitz, along with Mr. Heath, both encouraged and provided input and ideas on ways to negatively influence the narrative against Miss Lively, her family, and her business, as well as suppressing negative press about Mr. Baldoni. For instance, On August 9, 2024, the film's release date, in discussing certain negative articles about himself with Miss Abel, Mr. Baldoni stated, quote, "There's no way we can just let this go." 276. On August 15th, 2024, Mr. Baldoni texted Miss Nathan and Miss Abel, stating that his business partner, Mr. Sarowitz, suggested, quote, "flipping the narrative," arising from unnamed sources who had made false claims about Miss Reynolds' involvement in the script of the film, and suggested ways to manipulate those rumors to make Mr. Reynolds appear to be anti-feminist. There was no truth to these claims. Screenshot of an email from Justin to Melissa and Jennifer. It states, "No worries. Quickly, my partner Steve asked about flipping the narrative from this leak this morning about Ryan saying script was a disaster and he saved the movie." Screenshot of an email from Justin to Melissa and Jennifer states, "To something about Ryan claiming the female hired was feminist writer, didn't know how to tackle a female film, etc., using their own words against them." 277. Mr. Baldoni stated that, quote, "This is an easy flip," before Ms. Nathan indicated that she was already working on a story for Variety that would achieve this goal. 278. The chief problem with these stories was that they were not based on Mr. Reynolds', quote, "own words." Mr. Reynolds never said that the, quote, "script was a disaster and he saved a movie," nor did he ever claim that the, quote, "female hired was a female writer who, quote, didn't know how to tackle a female film." Nor was there any evidence backing up Mr. Sarowitz's proposed line of attack on Mr. Reynolds. Just a week before this creative suggestion to smear Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Sarowitz had posed for pictures with Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath at the opening of their Wayfarer Foundation, wearing a shirt that said, quote, "Seek always to do that which is right and noble." Mr. Sarowitz's proposal to retaliate against Miss Lively by seeking to harm her husband's reputation makes a mockery of the mantra Mr. Sarowitz professes to follow when on camera. 279. As of August 16, 2024, Ms. Nathan was continuing to confer with additional reporters to release stories that would cast Miss Lively and or Mr. Reynolds in a negative light. 280. Meanwhile, Miss Lively neither publicly commented nor directed any of her representatives to comment to or engage with the print media, social media, or otherwise about the hostile work environment Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and Wayfarer created. Indeed, throughout the time period discussed herein, Miss Lively never provided her publicist with details about the hostile work environment that she, alongside the other cast members and crew, had experienced. 281. Moreover, Ms. Lively expressly instructed her publicist, Leslie Sloan, not to engage with press inquiries, including ones regarding the on-set behavior of Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, or Wayfarer. In other words, Ms. Lively's instructions to her publicist were the opposite of a smear or exposing him, even while she believed he was behind the attacks on her. Mr. Reynolds confirmed that instruction to Miss Lively's publicist on August 13th and again on August 29th, directing her to continue to, quote, "remain quiet and not do anything to shape any stories, whether positive or negative," reiterating an instruction that both he and Miss Lively had given her verbally at the premiere of the film in Denmark on August 9th to, quote, "not talk to anyone about any of the attacks on Blake." Screenshot of text messages between Leslie and Ryan, I believe. "Hi, it's Les. Just checking in to tell you that I'm thinking about you. B and the family. Hugs to all." Ryan says, "Thank you. This is the craziest thing I've ever witnessed in my life, but it will be resolved." Leslie, "Hi, sorry to bother you, but this is clogging my inbox. I'm not answering." Ryan says, "Thanks for sending. It's imperative we stay silent on everything and speak to nobody. As I mentioned in Denmark before Blake's premiere, to not talk to anyone about any of these attacks on Blake. Just making sure you haven't done that at any point. I think this is sweet Bart said this, but the only thing to do is remain quiet for now." Leslie, "I have not, per your instructions." 282. Miss Lively and other cast members who had not appeared in the press with Mr. Baldoni experienced a sudden tidal wave of increasingly negative public attention building around them. Miss Lively and others suspected that the extraordinary rapid shift in public sentiment and press coverage that began on the day of the film's release was likely orchestrated by the men about whom Miss Lively and others had raised HR complaints. 283. On August 10, 2024, Miss Lively sent a text message to a female cast member regarding how she was doing, writing that she was, quote, both thrilled and so bummed. Him literally hiring bots to attack my character while I promote a movie that he benefits most from financially is a terrible feeling. It's almost impossible to comprehend. That cast member responded by expressing sympathy for Miss Lively and confidence that the truth would come out. 284. On August 10, 2024, Miss Giannetti texted Miss Lively to congratulate her on the success of the film's opening. And on August 11, 2024, at 12:25 a.m., Miss Lively replied to Miss Giannetti, quote, "This was a horrifying shoot, and the only way for me to make peace with that was the work and the success of the film. And everyone rallied behind that in the end, and I'm so grateful for everyone's hard work, yours included. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out, the film and the reception." A screenshot of an email from Blake to Giannetti. It says, "Thank you for the notes. I appreciate it. We'll get a 5. We'll get a 5. I'm possessed." This was a horrifying shoot, and the only way for me to make peace with that was the work and the success of the film. And everyone rallied behind that in the end, and I'm so grateful for everyone's hard work, yours included. I couldn't be happier with how it turned out, the film and the reception. I was sitting here today thinking about the first call in December 2022. Thank you for reaching out to Warren and bringing me into this film. I wouldn't have done it had I known what it would have been like and what a loss that would have been in the long run. You know what they say, what doesn't kill you makes you 50 million opening weekend. 285. Also, on August 11th, 2024, Miss Lively received a message from another cast member making observations regarding the evidence smear campaign against Miss Lively, and the cast was, quote, insane. Miss Lively responded, quote, "Yeah, I'm legitimately depressed and heartbroken, like in an immense amount of pain. I'm sorry it's been aimed at all of us, you included." 286. On that same day, Miss Lively reached out to the film's screenwriter, Christy Hall, after she was questioned about an impromptu comment Miss Lively made about Mr. Reynolds' input on the rooftop scene in the film, citation 44. Miss Lively expressed a heartfelt apology that her comment resulted in questions to Miss Hall, which Miss Hall graciously accepted, sharing that she did not take Miss Lively's comment personally. At the same time, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Sarowitz were scheming with their crisis PR team to find a way to exploit this moment to, quote, flip the narrative and paint Mr. Reynolds as anti-feminist. Screenshots of email from Blake to Christy Hall. "Hey Christy, I hope you're enjoying the immense success of this weekend and for what it means for stories about women, by women, in film. I heard you were ambushed at your junket with a question about something I said on the red carpet. I feel awful. I never would have said anything that I thought could be used against you or anyone. I was just proud of my partner and feeling grateful for the ways in which he shows up for me. I believe firmly that two things can be true. In this case, he can show up for me and do great work doing so, and you can do great work which got us all here. But the media will make things more black and white. And I should have seen that before speaking off the cuff. I was frazzled for a multitude of reasons that you may know something about or not. But in that moment, all I was trying to focus on was love and positivity. And the key source of that for me is my family, which is why it was a crutch for me to talk about them. I'm mortified how that translated with regard to you, though. I pride myself in being thoughtful and trying not to step in landmines, but I did. It was such an avoidable own goal. And I'm so sorry for any upset or hurt it may have caused you or left you feeling badly in any way. That was never my intention. I was thinking about audiences loving real life love, and seeing that on screen is inspiring. I should have been holding all of that and you while speaking publicly, and I didn't do that. I'm sorry. I spoke about you during the many days of junkets, but of course, the one that gets shared back to you is the one where I give my husband credit for the invisible work he did on this movie. I quite literally could not have gotten through it without him, in every way. But that's not your bag to carry, and somehow it was, if even for a moment. We'll hopefully talk more one day about plenty. What it is to be a woman in this industry is messy and painfully not charted enough. I live in New York and would love to get together anytime. Just let me know. There's so much to say, but none of that is for today. Today is a congratulations, a celebration, and I'm sorry for any upset I might have caused in an otherwise beautiful moment. Sending you the best. Blake. 287 on